Okay, hello everyone, that's trippy. Okay, how are we all feeling, everyone? How are we doing? There we go. Thanks for joining, everyone. Welcome, we are super excited for this unreal evening. This is a bit surreal, a little bit nervous, but should be absolutely fantastic. So thank you all for joining. My name's Charlie, of those who don't know me. This is Marcus, or Dr. Marcus, and James. And this talk is all about joyful fueling for your New Year's fitness goals, okay? Now, it's no surprise, it's just been the new year. Some resolutions flying about, maybe some fitness resolutions as well for some of you. A new race, maybe half a marathon, who knows?
Show of hands, who's got anything booked in for the year ahead?
There we go.
Nice.
Okay, nice.
There we go. Well, our main goal with this talk is to help you become more aware of what the world of diet actually looks like. Now, there's a lot of noise going around with diet, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat. Our main goal here is to not only help you be more aware of just the underpinnings of what the world of diet looks like, but also to help empower you to make your own decisions for your nutrition and to actually eat in line with how you want to eat, not because some dude on Instagram told you how to eat, okay? Now, this is very much a... What was that?
Unless it's James.
Unless it's James, of course, sorry, yes, of course, unless it's James. Now, this here is a workshop, it's not a lecture, so any ideas, questions that you have not lecture, but workshop, shout them out. If you disagree with us, shout it out as well. We'd love to not argue, but talk to you as well. So yes, it's very much a workshop, yeah. For sure. The first section, we'll be looking at some more of the conceptual ideas behind the world of diet, some of the underpinnings of body images, body ideals, why we want to look a certain way as well. We might have a little bit of a break in between, and then the second half, we'll be looking at the psychology of diet, okay? And some tools and tips that you guys can use if you do have a race coming up or if you do have a sports event as well. So that's what we're going to go into for the day today. As I mentioned, my name's Charlie. This is Dr. Marcus. We are co-founders of the Mood Booster, a well-being brand started here in London, whose main goal is simple. It's to help you find accessible joy in your everyday, to quite literally boost your mood. We do it through evidence-based tools and tips as well. Dr. Marcus, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for the introduction.
There we go.
I'm struggling to find the placement. Anyway, lovely to have you all here this evening. I'm super excited and also just super excited to be here with these two chaps. It's been amazing getting this arranged. So yeah, it's just lovely to be here. Yeah, Dr. Marcus, I'm not a real doctor. So if anyone goes into anything, that's not me. No, I'm joking. PhD in psychology. So I lecture in psychology. Currently researching in psychology as well. And one of my big passions is sort of helping make psychological research and evidence more accessible for everyone in the community. Helping people know themselves better, understand themselves better, and just find joy through understanding themselves better. So really, yeah, embodying that through what we're doing with the Mood Booster, like Charlie said, the community, the Run Club, the research we're doing, the podcast, all of those things. And this evening is one example. So yeah, just very excited. Also note, someone got an aeroplane to be here. So
there she is.
Incredible.
Thanks, welcome from Dublin.
No pressure. Yeah, just really excited to share not only our sort of research with you, but our sort of personal experiences as well.
Yeah, 100%. As Marcus mentioned there, part of what we do is the podcast. A couple months ago, we had James on our podcast. We were speaking about misinformation and toxic influencer culture in the world of diet. It was a brilliant episode, and to one-up it, we thought we'd bring it here to you guys today. So welcome, James.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for coming. Just a bit of background on me. I am a registered dietitian day to day. That's my day job. I work in intensive care. But in my spare time, I suppose you could call it, I post a lot on social media. And most of that is to do with like combating misinformation, nutritional misinformation. There's a lot of nutritional misinformation on the internet. If you've ever been on the internet, you've come across it. And I'm essentially trying to provide people with evidence-based nutritional information to improve their health literacy. So essentially, being able to spot misinformation when you see it, be able to interpret research at a very basic level, and then also just kind of contextualize nutrition and health within the systems that shape it. So trying to demoralize food and bodies and kind of see food as food and a body as a body, and then kind of center the context that health exists into. So that's kind of my background. Hopefully we'll cover quite a lot of that today. And as mentioned, if you've got any questions, if you've got any interruptions, just like shout. It's not, I don't think any of us want to be up here speaking at you for an hour. So just like get involved. And thank you for coming.
Get involved. Thank you. Right. James.
So we'll jump straight in because this is about diet and it's a new year. By a show of hands, if you're comfortable doing so, have you ever been on a diet? And if you could keep your hand raised, was your main motivation for being on that diet to like chase a body ideal or chase some sort of aesthetic? Yeah, okay, fine. If it wasn't, you're probably in the wrong place this evening. So I think that just goes to show how like pervasive this is. I don't know if you guys have got any thoughts on your own first introduction to diet.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I won't go into the nitty gritty of it, but I sort of started going to the gym when I was 15, 16, probably all for the wrong reasons. I mean, I was very much chasing a body ideal, trying to get bigger. Back in school when it was that sort of time. I actually had a close run-in. I almost bought something illegal online. Bit of a candid moment, yeah, seriously. Because the guy looked a way I wanted to look back when I was younger, I thought I'd try and buy it. I wasn't allowed to because I wasn't 18. What that says about the product, I'm not sure. But that was my intro into health and wellness, was misinformation, was chasing a body ideal. And I didn't have a lot of information other than YouTube. That was my sort of idea there. I've very much moved into now going to the gym, but because I like how it makes me feel. I'm well aware we are all sat up here as well, 3 young guys who still do go to the gym, so there's a little bit of irony there, but for me, my main reason here is unpacking just the misinformation side of things, because there's so much online, and trying to figure out why we chase these certain body ideals as well, why we want to look a certain way as well. So that's, for me, where I come from.
So thank you. And I share similar background in the sense of I also have had a troublesome diet history as a young person. But I think before I start there, I just wanted to start by saying I'm coming to this today with obviously research and expertise that I'm excited to share with you. But on a human level, I'm of the stance that we are always becoming. We're always trying to be better. None of us here are here being like, oh, we found the cure to diets and how to have the best diet ever. We're always trying to learn and always trying to be better, and that's very much the stance that I take. But having said that, over the last year, I've which I'm really excited to share with you today, found a lot more sort of a neutrality with food, with diet and my exercise in general. And I've done that through ways which, again, I'll share coming up, but just briefly saying sort of abundance and adding things and being excited by adding things. Because, historically, again, being honest, have had a really bad sort of place in terms of my own body image, carrying fat in places that I didn't think. Even now, as I'm not in the body that my 16-year-old would want to have been in, and that's fine because I'm way fine with that now, and that's a neutral headspace to be in. But when I was 16, I definitely was having some disordered eating, and it wasn't great. So definitely coming to a place where I'm in a great place, but every single day we're always trying to be better. We're always learning. So just excited to share that learning with you, really. Some real psychological background, theory and evidence, and hopefully you can walk away feeling a bit more empowered and a bit more knowledgeable with that information.
Yeah,
100%.
We're also acutely aware that we're 3 white guys with microphones up here, so it's nothing groundbreaking, but hopefully we'll kind of highlight the intersectionality of all the things that we're going to talk about today, and hopefully you can see that reflected in your own life as well, and not just listen to us drone on.
100%. Okay. Oh, yes.
So just to kind of contextualize quickly as we can, what we're talking about today is diet culture and weight stigma, and these are 2 distinct things that we have to separate from each other. So diet culture is an overall kind of set of beliefs that values thinness over everything else, and it ascribes certain characteristics to people that are in certain bodies. So it values discipline and success. It assumes that people in thin bodies are successful and disciplined, and that thin bodies are a proxy for health. And we'll go on to unpack that a little bit later on. And it centers personal responsibility. So it takes out the kind of systemic influences on health outcomes that we know exist and kind of puts the person's choices at the center of that. Weight stigma is ascribing negative traits to someone who's in a certain body. And importantly, it involves hierarchies of power. So it has, because it is founded in hierarchies of power, it has real consequences on people's quality of life and their health outcomes. And it can be internalized, it can be interpersonal, and it can be cultural and structural as well. So all of those things give it the power to make a difference in people's health outcomes. So when we're discussing diet culture and weight stigma, it's not just this abstract thing that exists in the ether. It has very tangible effects on people's health outcomes. And I hope you can take some of that information away with you today so that when you recognize it in yourself or in other people, you can unpick it to help yourself, but also to help the people that you care about in your community.
Lovely stuff, lovely transition there. Well,
Sorry, just shout out Charlie and his transition.
yeah, there are more to come
yeah.
there as well.
Incredible.
So thank you very much. That's what I'm offering here. Before we go into what to eat, which I'm sure a lot of us, we're here for our fitness goals, it's important to understand why we want to look a certain way and historically what this has looked like as well, just to give a bit of context to the world of diet culture. So we actually start back in the Middle Ages. It looks a bit fuzzy up there, but around the Middle Ages, we start with something called holy anorexia. This was very common among religious women, Catholic nuns in particular. To imitate the suffering of Jesus Christ and his pains, women would intentionally starve themselves and fast to look a certain way. This was the earliest sort of record of diet culture, so-called. It dates back quite a way. Yeah.
And it's worth noting as well, diet culture shares a lot of similarities in the language that's used in diet culture, and it's historically been used in religious practice as well. So language doesn't just describe behaviours, it produces behaviours. And we can see that when we look at the way that religious language has shaped behaviours by describing some thoughts and some actions as pure or unpure, talking about temptation, all of these words that are used to kind of deny bodily autonomy and kind of produce certain behaviours. And you can see that even directly in diet culture with Weight Watchers who have literally just copy and pasted the word sin to describe food. So in Weight Watchers, food have 5 sins or 4 sins or 3 sins. So that's a very obvious example. But you've also got eating clean, being on cleanses. You're like, I'm not going to have a biscuit because I'm being good. These all are very morally charged words that we use to describe food and eating patterns. And that's not by accident. That is to produce certain behaviors and to produce certain thoughts. So again, language is really powerful and it's used for a purpose. So it's worth just keeping that in mind when you're describing food, when you're describing your body, when you're describing other people's food choices and bodies. It's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, I think it also just shows how sort of inherently and innately or subliminally like conditioned we are.
Yeah.
You know, we've all said, oh, I'm going to be bad, I'm going to have this takeaway, or oh, I'm going to have this cheat day. And, you know, all of those things just perpetuate that feeling of food is something to moralize.
Yeah, and the cheat day one's a good one, which we'll talk about later on with having rules. Like if you've been cheating, you've been breaking the rules. It assumes that there are rules there to be broken. And when you break the rules, there are repercussions and there's guilt and there's shame. So again, just being really mindful and critical of the language that you're using around food.
Yeah, I think so we just really wanted to bring in these examples to set the scene of showing how actually we are socialized, so much so to believe that weight equals health or lack thereof. And actually this is something that's way more socialized and conditioned in us from socialization than we think. And we've given a prime example where it's literally reversed historically and has been seen historically to just sort of illustrate the level at which this is socialized within us. Tudor times, or pre-industrial era, we've got Henry VIII here. We all know Henry VIII, I'm assuming. Mm-hmm. Fortunately or unfortunately, we all okay. He's obviously known to be a larger man. In the Tudor times, health was wealth, and health was symbolized by being larger, because being larger meant you could afford food, you could afford energy, you could afford calories, and moreover, you didn't have to go out and work and do manual labor, which obviously was expending energy. So literally, historically, we've seen a reverse of that or a flip of that. Contextually, we're like, oh, we're so conditioned, we would aspire to be larger. It's the complete opposite now. We can't really imagine that because we've not been raised or socialized to think that. But it's just we wanted to give that example to sort of set the scene before we really go into the diet and all of the things.
And a really pertinent turning point when it comes to the shifting of body ideals from larger bodies into thinner bodies was colonialism. Before we get into that, we're going to talk about kind of the BMI index and where it came from. So the BMI index was kind of pioneered by Adolf 𝐾𝐞𝐚𝐫. He was a Belgian statistician, not a medic, there was no dietitians back then. And was then popularised by Ancel Keys in the 1970s. Yeah, I was the first one. And popularised by Ancel Keys in the 1970s, who sold it to life insurance companies to use as a proxy for health outcomes. So BMI as an index was never really planned to be used to predict individual health outcomes. It was planned initially by Adolf 𝐾𝐞𝐚𝐫 to describe the average man, and it'll be no surprise to anybody that the average man was based on European white men. So you've got this BMI index that's been used for centuries now to try and predict health outcomes at the individual level, but it was built on very shaky foundations. And then the kind of turning point it was obviously a long turning point, happened over centuries, from kind of fat bodies that were previously used as a status symbol to distance the rich from the poor. And as colonialism started to emerge, Britain getting its fingers in all the pies that it was never wanted in the first place. And as social values and structures change, so do socially constructed ideals, and that includes body ideals. So there's a fantastic book, see what Charlie's done for his transition.
There we go.
Oh, wow.
Great stuff, yeah.
Called Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Stringer, and she is a mind much greater than mine and incredibly articulate, but she describes in great detail the kind of emergence of thinness becoming a central tenet of Eurocentric beauty ideals, and that whiteness became equatable to thinness, and whiteness was something that represented civility and restraint and was reactionary to black bodies in the West at the time. So it is so deeply rooted because BMI was based on kind of white European males, and it's so deeply rooted in sexism and racism and all these other things that influence socially constructed ideals that include body image. So weight stigma predates modern medicine, and we retrospectively medicalized it. So that is a really important take-home message, that the shape of someone's body that we've been conditioned to believe, most of us, for all of our lives, the shape of someone's body doesn't necessarily tell you anything about their health, and it definitely doesn't tell you anything about their character.
Wow, wonderful.
Just another example of retrospectively medicalizing BMI. So before, we thought that the BMI cutoffs were very concrete. 18.5 to 25 was a normal body weight, 25 to 30 was overweight, and 30 plus was obese. And we've since changed those. So cohorts from Asian, Chinese, Middle Eastern, Black African or Afro-Caribbean backgrounds have different cutoffs now, because again, we've retrospectively medicalized something that was socially constructed in the first place. And again, this is a very good, high quality recent study, a systematic review and meta-analysis from 2025 that showed that when you control for cardiorespiratory fitness, the associations between a higher BMI and all-cause mortality, so dying of any cause, were attenuated. So that essentially means that if you have people who have high cardiorespiratory fitness, even if they have a high BMI, an overweight or obese BMI, they are not at any increased risk of all-cause mortality. So it just goes to show that there are a number of other health-promoting behaviours, diet quality, sedentary behaviour, physical activity, and other structural influences that we know, poverty, education, these all affect health outcomes, and they're not captured by BMI. And then just to touch a little bit on, again, the influence of sexism in all of this. This is a study that we pulled that showed the endorsement of Western beauty ideals, which I think demonstrates perfectly the intersectionality of it. The endorsement of Western beauty ideals and practices were associated with hostility towards women, traditional sexism, hostile sexism, and to a lesser extent, benevolent sexism. And we can also draw a parallel between the language as well, right? The language that we use in diet culture is shrinking, making bodies smaller, and that necessarily has implications with power hierarchies and subordinates and things like that. And last one, I'm really sorry, I feel like I've been talking at you for ages. And this is as I said before, that this isn't just something that exists out in the ether, that's a very philosophical concept that we're just like up here thinking about. This has tangible effects on people's health outcomes. So the impact of weight stigma has real physiological and psychological impacts on people. People who experience weight stigma and internalize that weight stigma are at higher risk of oxidative stress, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, anxiety, and depression. They are less likely to access healthcare when they need it and stay engaged with healthcare once they have accessed it. And they are less likely to engage in health promoting behaviors like exercise. So if you feel stigmatized and you've internalized that stigma, you're less likely to engage in those behaviors that we know improve health outcomes, even if your body shape or your body weight doesn't change. So it's really important, if you recognize weight stigma in yourself and other people, to unpick it, because it has really tangible effects on your health outcomes and the health outcomes of other people.
I think bringing that back to why we're all in this room today, especially for fueling for our fitness goals, just making sure that we're being aware of why we're consuming certain food or certain amounts of food and having it be the correct reason as well, is super important. We'll get onto that more later with more tangible stuff as well. But if we're segueing forward a little bit more, we look in the early 90s, we had the sort of case of the fat-free foods. This was the thing that all the celebrities were taking or eating, so to speak. In the 2000s, carbs were the bad guy. They'd have, bun-free burgers or whatever you have. And now recently, we've had the wave of seed oils and ultra-processed foods. All these, I've fallen victim to that maybe a little bit as well. But what we're seeing here is that whatever these food groups are, they are labeled as the bad guy, right? There's a lot of conditioning here around fear and insecurity all throughout history. And a lot of this is really heavily focused on restriction, okay, and control by telling us certain bodies are bad, thus certain food groups are bad as well, okay? We can see through, all throughout history, chasing certain body ideals. It doesn't make us shallow, it just means that we're products of our environment, okay? It's also really important to look at how we're consuming this info. It started as, it started as religion. Then in the 90s and the 2000s, it was in TV, actors and film. Now our environment is our phones. It's the social media that we consume. Leads me on to what era we're in now, the era of the influencer. It's a bit ironic again, we're up here, but alas, that is where we are really. I think it's interesting to know that with influencers, they are sort of this concentrated manifestation of a social narrative of which we're seeing that thin is good, larger is bad. That's often the sort of narrative that we're seeing. The word influencer is that they are influencing the social narrative. So it's just important to be really aware of where your information is coming from. How much of you guys get your information from TikTok, Instagram, about like health and wellness? Show of hands, just like honestly, YouTube maybe even. Like if you see a reel and then you might change your diet or you might have a certain recipe because you see something, right? It's everywhere. What we do is because of the social media that we consume, and that's the era that we're in now. We know there's a lot of misinformation online as well, so it's really helpful to look at what the misinformation is saying and the body messaging that it's giving as well, okay? We actually have a little video on the next slide for you guys. We're gonna do a little bit of an exercise with everyone here, okay? We're gonna watch this video. Hopefully the volume, I think it's gonna come out here. We'll put a microphone to it. We really want you to look at the way this person's speaking, okay? The sort of messaging that they're conveying and some of the problems that we just think here. We want hands up, some ideas from you guys. We're gonna try and play this through the microphone, I think.
Is it gonna?
Hopefully.
Should play through this projector.
Oh, should it? Okay.
Granddad to be turning.
I'll do that there. Where's it playing through?
And the graves, if they seen what men were like today, men weren't like this 60 years ago. Back then,
Can everyone hear it or not?
much higher testosterone and fertility levels. A big part of this is because they weren't surrounded.
Oh, wow.
You're pressing.
What happened there? It's paused.
The mic was on the thing.
No? What's happened here? Sorry, guys. It's technical errors. We'll sort this out quickly. What's happened there? Is it the Wi-Fi?
Our granddad to be turning in the graves if they seen what men were like today. Men weren't like this 60 years ago. Back then, men had much higher testosterone and fertility levels. A big part of this is because they weren't surrounded by as many synthetic chemicals and modern man.
Are we on the Wi-Fi?
I think we're on the Wi-Fi.
Huge.
It's huge. Should we quickly try and hotspot? That'd be all right.
Bear with us.
Bear with us, guys. Okay, quickly hotspot. You guys can just talk to them about some certain stuff here. Yeah. It's a good video. Well, it's a bad video, but it's got some good. It's going to spark some debate here.
Spoiler alert: he's not too keen on fat people.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a fan of the accent though. I don't know if you heard it there.
Man's body
Here
is
we go.
built on ultra-processed food, testosterone and fertility levels. A big part of this is because they weren't surrounded by as many synthetic chemicals. A modern man's body is built on ultra-processed food that's loaded with hormone-disrupting compounds, fruit and veg sprayed with pesticides that are linked to infertility, hormone disruption and cancer, toxic chemicals in drinking water, microplastics that interfere with hormone signaling, then top it off with comfort, screens and media programming that rewards passiveness over resilience. None of this has happened on accident. Weak, emasculated, exhausted men are far more easier to distract, easier to manage and easier to control. So how do we fix this? We start cutting out all the ultra-processed food, start eating a whole food organic diet, get out every day, exercise, lift weights and swerve them vapes right off. If this problem gets any worse, then I'm telling you now, it won't end well.
Okay, any initial reactions to what might be a little bit harmful about the stuff like I was saying? Any ideas from anyone?
Or like what emotion is it trying to elicit?
Yeah, someone in the back.
I think it's really bad. It's kind of trying to link weight towards it's like got a strong homophobic element to it as well. Like it's making this comment about being like unhealthy and then being effeminate, which I think is a really dangerous two things to link.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, his literal words was something saying these hormones are making men emasculine, which means they're easier to control. So what is the opposite of that? Feminine, you can be controlled. It's just, yeah, I mean, that is a very, yeah. And anything that's feminine or feminine associated with being feminine or anything in line with that is bad.
Yeah, this is like a really good example of just ideology repackaged as health and wellness. Like that's essentially saying, I know it's about men, but it's essentially saying the worst thing a man can be is feminine because femininity doesn't have any redeeming qualities. And emasculated and weak men are easier to control. Again, that language that's used, that narrative that's being spun is really dangerous. Any other emotions that anyone thought he was trying to, did you feel like happy and safe?
Yeah.
It's kind of implying that if you're bigger, you're able to do other things. For an example, some of these people like dancing, and it's kind of assuming that if you're of a larger build, that maybe you're not able to do those things, but those people are literally able to do those things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. First off, assuming that being larger is bad in the first place, which is a bold narrative to make such bold claims out as well, and then saying, yeah, you can't do this because you look this way as well, which is just all wrong and backwards.
It kind of seemed like they was trying to make fun of them, just make a fool out of them for just being in a body and having a body that he didn't agree with and performing their gender in a way that he didn't agree with either.
Yeah. I completely agree with all of you.
Thank you.
What about the evidence? What do we think about the evidence? Yes.
They're just doing scary walks along Tesco aisles.
Yeah, scary.
Full of chemicals out to get you, and showing the ingredients list of whatever product it was for 1 second.
Yeah.
That just because it's got a long ingredients list, it's going to be harmful to you without giving yourself time to sort of look at it, read it, understand why those chemicals might be there and what their uses are. And so there wasn't really evidence of just they're harmful chemicals, they're out to get you and to control you.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're just making these bold claims about things and just assuming that because the way they're saying it sounds scary and that we won't bother to look into it. So you're right. It's just painting these bold claims without any real evidence behind them. And fear mongering is basically the bottom line, right?
Yeah, if someone says that this causes cancer and neurotoxicity and then just moves on, that's not an acceptable thing to do. There needs to be proof for what people are saying. And if they're stoking up fear, it's easy for you to believe it because we're conditioned to take on fearful information.
100%.
I think even in the editing and all of those things, it's just all it is doing is just rage baiting, basically, isn't it? And trying to divide people and make a scapegoat and make it, oh, fat's bad, gay people are bad, women are bad, all of these things are bad, and ultimately just making people less happy.
Yeah, and the weird thing is the take-home message was eat whole foods, don't vape, and lift weights. But somehow we got there from wherever, I don't know, I wouldn't want
hating people.
Yeah, hating people. Yeah.
100%. Well, I think it's a fair statement to say that throughout diet culture, as we've seen, it sort of makes this misinformation as some of the key things that we rely on is fear, or not we, but they rely on is things like fear and insecurity. Something that James does a fantastic job at is taking down these influences. It's actually how we found him, to be honest with you, in the street, just but it was about sort of the misinformation in these influences and what they're spreading as well. Here are some trends that I think we should all be quite aware of for what to see when we're consuming the source of social media. Number one, the personal responsibility. How much are they taking versus saying that you should take, right, James?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing when wellness influencers completely remove the socioeconomic determinants of health that we know are really powerful: poverty, education, access to healthcare, access to healthy and affordable foods, living in a walkable community, job security, housing. All of these things matter more to your health than imazalil on citrus fruits. It's just a way for people to fearmonger and sell you products and services. So if people are taking health and nutrition out of that context, out of the social structures that shape health and nutrition, it's a big, big red flag.
100%. It was very restrictive. It was saying, cut this out, cut this out, cut this out. not a lot of addition in there, just, yeah, I mean, it's all just restriction, right?
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but if people are telling you not to eat this, don't eat this, don't eat that, you're left with literally nothing. So you'll be thin probably, because you can't eat anything according to them. But that's another one. You're looking to, health can be abundance, it doesn't always have to be restriction.
Yeah. Again, very, very fearful language, just scaremongering and fear-mongering, just scaring with no real claims there, right, as well.
Yeah. And I think it's a really powerful emotion to tap into is fear, and misinformation spreads quicker than accurate information, but fear-based information spreads even quicker than that. And it makes sense. We're trying to protect ourselves. We're trying to live longer. So if someone's saying that something is a threat to us and a threat to our life, we're going to give it more weight and we're going to share it more. And that's how misinformation, particularly fear-based information, spreads so quickly. That influencer that we just showed, not that I'm bitter, but he's got about 250,000 followers on Instagram, which is, and he got that within a few months, just based on the kind of content that he's putting out, because it spreads so quickly. So if information makes you feel scared, it's probably not accurate, balanced, scientific information, and you can just straight up ignore it.
Yeah, and more so for that, it doesn't have any evidence behind it, right? That's usually a very, very common trend in what we're seeing in a lot of these videos as well.
Yeah, like peer-reviewed scientific evidence is what we're looking for, and that can be difficult because people can also weaponize that. But like this guy's talking about neurotoxicity and cancer and hormone disruptors, and not even flashing a paper up. Like wellness influencers used to try a little bit harder, and now they're just like lazy. So at least if they flash a paper up, just take a second to read the title. But if there's no papers, if there's no references, bin it. It's rubbish.
Yeah. Weight-centric, it was using the idea that one body type should be the type that we all strive for, and saying that larger is worse. That was just a claim that video was boldly making, and often a lot of these videos say the same thing, that being larger is worse, and that's a trend as well.
Yeah, and as we spoke about, like weight stigma has very real, tangible effects on people's health outcomes and their quality of life. So if people are punching down and making fun of fat people to try and get followers and attention, they don't genuinely care about your health. They're just in it for themselves.
Yeah, this one is huge of what you do as well, is the mechanisms over the outcomes, okay? I'd like them to explain them.
Yeah, so mechanisms are something that would happen in like a petri dish. So what lots of seed oils is about, has anyone heard like anti-seed oil propaganda recently,
Yep.
right? And a big thing that they say is that seed oils are a source of omega-6, and that's absolutely true. Omega-6 is broken down into arachidonic acid. See, this all sounds very sexy and scientific, and everyone's listening now. That's also absolutely true. Arachidonic acid is used in the formation of pro-inflammatory icosanoids. Sexy, scientific, that's also absolutely true. But what we don't see, and when it comes to clinical outcomes, is that people who eat more seed oils have uncontrolled systemic inflammation. Because luckily your body's much more complex than you eat seed oil, you get inflamed. Like that is absolutely nonsense. So what's happening in a petri dish in that one single biochemical pathway is not the same as what's happening in your body, because your body's complicated. It's got hundreds, if not thousands, of pathways acting at the same time for and against each other. So these scientific biochemical pathways and mechanisms sound really convincing because they sound intelligent, they sound smart, and often they get things right, they tell the truth, and then they make a massive jump to a clinical outcome that is just missing all of the scientific evidence required to get there, which, by the way, takes decades to get. So that's why they make the jump, because they can't be arsed doing the research themselves.
And lastly, is that it's all very simplistic. There's no nuance to it. There's no, I mean, exactly what you're saying. There's no explanation or depth to it. It's just so simplistic. That's literally it. So those are some red flags that you should be looking out for in any of the health content that you see. If these can start sort of flagging in your own mind, you're on the right path, definitely, to consuming better content at least. How are we all feeling for time? Are we wanting a little break? Are we cool to, there we go. How are we all feeling?
That was my personal favourite.
That was a good one. How are we all feeling? Are we feeling good for the next part, yeah? Cool, amazing.
Back on.
I might actually just do that again for everyone's benefit.
Thank you.
Wow.
Really enjoy that. Yeah,
That was a good one.
Soak that up. Yeah.
Who's this guy here?
Okay, who's this guy? I think we've called him Eugene
Eugene
Edmund III.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said I'm a sucker for alliteration, but then Charlie was like, well, actually, Eugene the elephant doesn't really go. So we added the Edmund in there to help. But this lovely little orange top hat, I think, it's a lovely little chap there. What I'm going to tell you to do as I'm talking for the next couple of minutes is don't think about Eugene. Don't think about him. You're not allowed to think about him. Not at all. And if you think about him, you're not going to win the Shocks headset.
There we go.
Okay?
Yeah.
Just to add some motivation in there for you. But yeah, no, what I want to do for this next 5 or so minutes is really unpack diets and what diets are and the psychology of diets. You've all come today thinking about learning about how we can better find joy in our diets and all of those things. And we've given some really good context as about actually, firstly, to be able to find joy, we need to just dismantle some of what we might even believe to be what we need to be aspiring for in the first place. But look, I think most of you put your hands up at the beginning about being on a diet and wanting that to be associated with your body image or aesthetics. So we are all, and we're not going to walk away from this being like, okay, I'm not going to have a diet again. And we acknowledge that and know that. So it's important to break down actually how the psychological mechanisms that are going on when we are on a diet, or we go through a diet, or we put ourselves on a diet, and understand what's going on in our own brains. So potentially we can maybe challenge that, disrupt that, and or just find more joy and find ways to find joy if we can first know what's going on in our brains. So to do so, I think it's important to, again, on the theme of language, even just understand the language that we use when we talk about diets, because they are different, and we can use these words interchangeably, but they are fundamentally very different. So a diet is exactly what we were talking about at the beginning. We're talking Weight Watchers, keto, I don't know.
Intermittent fasting.
Thank you, intermittent fasting. Any others?
No, that's it.
Carnivore diet.
Carnivore diet, there we go, all of the above. Importantly, a diet is temporary. It's something that we do temporarily, and it's goal-focused, often, as we've just established, weight-focused. The goal is to lose amount of weight, or to be, a certain size, or in a certain pair of jeans, whatever it is, but often it's weight-focused. We saw that from the hands at the beginning. They are restrictive, as we've already gone on, or spoken about, and we will go on to speak about shortly, but they are restrictive in nature. Because you're focused on your weight and getting to a certain goal weight, you're restricting things and you're focusing on what you can't have. Like I said, they're short-term and they are very much all-encompassing. I've got to commit to this, there's no flexibility in this, I've got to do it, and I've got to commit, and I've got to be the best version of myself, because otherwise I'm not going to get there. All of those things, shock, spoiler alert, leads to failure and are seldom successful. I've been on myself in my life keto, I've been on intermittent fasting, I've done some other ones I can't be bothered to reel off, and all of them have stopped at some stage and then found another one. So
you did the carnivore recently, right?
Yeah, I did the carnivore. Yeah. I'm vegetarian. That's a joke.
Sorry.
But then we have what we're trying to move towards, and especially when I said at the beginning, I alluded to something that I've been trying to do myself over the last year, is move towards more of a headspace of just living with your diet. Now, every single one of us in this room has our own diet. It's your diet. It's simply, very simply put, the nutrition, the food you eat every single day of your lifespan. If you want to keep it as simple as that, that's what it is. But importantly, your diet, we aim for it to be flexible, balanced. It changes over time, it changes with seasons, it changes with the things you're going through, and there we've got it's personal and situationable. So even cultural, for example, think about religion, it's based on who you are. Menstrual cycle, all of those things, your diet is dependent on. But importantly, it's flexible as such. And of course, it's over your life, so it's your long-term habits that you create. And really importantly, unlike a diet which is weight-focused, there's neutrality to it, and we strive for that neutrality in your diet. So I said I'll speak about restriction. Diets, we will stick on a diet because, as I said, that's what we're here to focus on today. A diet, that's what they are, restriction-based. They're highly restrictive and they are rule-based. Things like no sugar, no carbs, we know all the things. No carbs before marbs, I think we said this.
There we go, yep,
yeah.
100%.
No carbs before marbs,
yep.
Yeah, we know that one. They're rigid and they're inflexible. And the thing is, with rigid rules, they require the perfect storm for us to be able to adhere to them and stick to them. They require the perfect storm of situations in our lives to every single day be able to maintain that thing. We all live lives every single day that are very variable. We have children, we have families, we have jobs, we have all of the commitments, we have our hormone cycles, all of those things, our mental health, our mood, all of those things are minute variables in a whole world that we live in, our whole system that change every single day. And therefore, when we set such rigid rules on ourselves, there's no room for that flexibility that as being human beings, we need. And then what happens when we inevitably need that rigid, that flexibility, and it's not there, we eat a biscuit. I'll keep coming to the analogy of eating biscuits, so I'll start there. We eat the biscuit. When we eat the biscuit because we're late home, or we just need some sugar because our dinner's ages away and we've got in late and the traffic was bad, we need that biscuit just to tide us over. What happens? Because we are so expecting ourselves to be so set, we blame ourselves, we catastrophize, we moralize, we think, oh, I'm just never going to succeed at this diet because I keep failing. The problem, first off, in terms of restriction, isn't the biscuit, isn't you, it's the restriction. We as human beings aren't supposed to be imposed with that much restriction on our lives.
Sorry about
No,
that.
no,
I was drinking.
You
Sorry.
stay
No one get
hydrated.
up.
You stay hydrated.
I think this is my dry Django broken.
In line with that, and I already touched on it, we have the abstinence violation effect, which is a psychological phenomenon that happens in all of us. It started from addiction research, and it can be used in loads of different facets of our lives. But it explains what happens when someone violates a rule that is either imposed on them or that they impose on themselves. So, show of hands, those of you that said you've been on a diet in the beginning, who has been on a diet, typically probably towards the end of the day, because that's when we see that our willpower and those sorts of things are wavering, who's had a biscuit or something that's a cheat in our diet and then absolutely thrown in the towel and just gone the whole hog? Yes, same. Exactly, and this is what the abstinence violation effect is talking about. Simply put, it means when I make one mistake in that rigid rule, I then just think the whole thing is over, and I've violated that abstinence, so that I may as well just commit to the whole biscuit tin basically and eat every single biscuit because I've failed already. So what's the harm in completely failing, right? There's nothing wrong with a biscuit. A biscuit is a biscuit. But when we put such harsh rules on ourselves, we have these things happening in our brain that are like, I've had a biscuit now, I'm a failure, I've got to do it, I'm never going to succeed, so I may as well just have the whole biscuit tin. If we didn't set the rigid rule in the first place, we wouldn't have such catastrophization. We wouldn't necessarily feel the need or the urge to go into the whole biscuit tin and raid the biscuit tin. Yes.
I get these videos on my reels, and I think it's a really good example where someone drops their phone and they look at it and it's fine, and then they just like throw it at the wall and say like, I dropped it once, I might as well trash the wall. And then it's like such a good example of this, because like, if you did that to your phone, you wouldn't then just like trash your whole phone, so why do you eat the whole biscuit tin? I just quite like that example.
There's that one of where you like spill a little bit of milk and you just pour the whole glass out, isn't it? As well? Yeah, they're everywhere, but yeah, exactly that.
That sounds like me to a T. I'm not gonna lie.
Spilling milk.
We're working on it, okay?
Yeah, clumsy guy.
Yeah, but again, the problem isn't you, it's not the biscuit, it's the real strict rules that we're putting on ourselves. Look, I'm not here to say a whole tin of biscuits bad, like we've got you all these cookies here this evening. So, but I think we can maybe agree that one biscuit in our day is probably maybe a little bit better, arguably, than a whole tin of biscuits. So the problem is not having one biscuit. That's balanced, that's normal, and that's sustainable. When we put those harsh rules, we then set ourselves up to see these cognitive things like the abstinence violation effect. Yeah.
There we go.
Ah,
Here he is.
Eugene
the third.
Don't think about him now. Look away and don't think about him. What are you thinking about?
There we go,
Eugene.
yeah.
Eugene. I mean, he's a cute looking chap, isn't he? Lovely chap.
Nice top hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask him where he got it, actually. Yeah. ChatGPT's finest. Just spoiler. Yeah, so ironic process theory is another thing. This all leads from the restriction and the heavy rules we put on ourselves. Ironic process theory, another psychological mechanism we observe. When we tell ourselves as human beings we're not allowed something, we want it more. We hyper-focus on it, we hyper-fixate on it. This isn't only seen in diets, it's seen in every part of our lives. We see it with children, you can't have sweets after whatever, you know, they want the sweets even more. The distractibility goes towards the thing we're not allowed. There are mechanisms cognitively that explain this and go through this, but for the sake of time today, I'm already rambling on. We won't go through them, but all we need to know is that when we're not allowed something and we tell ourselves we're not allowed it, it only makes the yearn, the want, the distraction to it so much stronger. So psychologically, we're drawn to it. Yes.
And also the other thing where you like a cheat, you have to make up for it through cardio, like extra workout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge.
We'll talk a little bit more about that, kind of like the difference between like earning your food through exercise, using exercise as a restriction and a punishment for fueling properly. Yeah, it's a huge thing that a lot of people go through.
Definitely. And again, through decades of psychological research, but I mean, this is a review I wanted to share with you because it sort of summarizes it. Here we've got basically restriction, diet restriction, food restriction results in eating binges once food is available, so eating more of that food once it's available, and in psychological manifestations such as preoccupation with food and eating, increased emotional responsiveness and dysphoria, and distractibility towards that thing that we're restricting, seen every single time. So when we're telling ourselves we're not allowed something, we want it more. Which leads us nicely onto this lovely little graphic we've got here again, courtesy of ChatGPT, is restriction versus addition. This is where we're trying to come to, and where sort of I was alluding to at the beginning. All of what I've spoken about already is the cup on your left, the left. You think about, it's a really nice analogy that's used in many different forms of our lives, or walks of our lives, and forms of psychology. But if you think we're taking something away from our life, in this case, food. We're not allowed the carbs, we're not allowed the biscuits, we're not allowed the takeaways. Our cup is just getting emptier and emptier. The cup's destiny, it's got a destiny, is to be full. The cup wants to be full. Our cup should always be full. So when we're just taking things away, the cup is wanting to be full, and what do? We try to refill it, and what do we try to refill it with? The direct thing that we've just stopped ourselves from having. It's the nearest, the thing we're thinking about the most, due to the processes we see. We just fill it back with what we're not allowed. We come to contrast the addition sort of mindset, where we're looking more towards just a sustainable, our own diets that we live over our lives are way less restrictive and just, less fluctuating, where we have abundance, we have addition. And again, speaking from lived experience over the last year, not only in my diet, but adding different exercises, not just focusing on running to sustain weight or whatever, adding like calisthenics, adding all of these different things. That you're so sort of focused on what you're adding, your cup is overflowing, as you can visually see here. You're not worried about what you can't have. And ironically, potentially the thing that you're telling yourself you're not allowed in the first place kind of goes, because there's less space for it in the cup in the first place. But importantly, here, there's balance, there's cookies. The cookies are still, the biscuits are still in the cup, but they're balanced with all of this abundance of wealth and other things that we've been adding. And we're really trying to empower and help sort of make that shift from restriction and cutting and focusing on weight to more neutrality and addition and abundance in our lives, and experimenting with cookbooks, trying new recipes, trying new, like you've all said, some of you have said you're here to train for a certain thing, and maybe some of you said at the beginning that was weight oriented or whatever. Maybe we could try a different class, or maybe we could try a different social activity that might have the same outcome, might not, but it's just another way of adding to our life as opposed to just restricting our diets. Finally, before I hand over back over to James, this is a huge theory in psychology, the self-determination theory. So I will do my best to just summarize it in the context of today's session. Very briefly put, it's a theory that explains human motivation, the way we behave on it every single day. Any single part of us and our behavior is theorized and has sort of theory attributed to it from the self-determination theory. In the context of diet, we'll speak about autonomy and competence. I'll pass over to James after on competence. But in terms of autonomy, we strive as human beings to feel like we're in control. We want agency. We want to feel like we are doing what we want to do, and we have power over our daily lives and what we're doing. Ironically, when we restrict and we tell ourselves we can't have this carb, we can't have this food group, we feel like we're in control, but that's very much superficial level control. We are perpetuating these social norms, this conditioning that we've seen at the beginning, we've spoken through, and we're ignoring our bodies, we're ignoring our intuition, and we're ignoring actually putting our health first. When we can move from restriction more and focus on that more and try to strive towards more abundance and addition and excitement and experimentation, that's when we can truly listen to our bodies and find joy in our diets. Competence is mastery and knowledge. We want to feel like we know what we're doing, whether that's our jobs, again, our diets, whatever it is. We want to know, we want to be a master over that. You're here today to learn and to understand more things. That's competence. James is extremely knowledgeable, very a huge fan of his wisdom, I'll hand over to you to go into some of more of those nitty gritties around actually training for your fueling for whatever you're training for.
So we've got probably about 10 minutes left to sprint through everything you need to know about nutrition. Just by like show of hands, are people here to kind of learn about sports nutrition specifically? or more general nutrition? Is it sports nutrition? Yeah. And then is it mainly runners in the room? No? Any other kind of sports?
Big hands, runners.
Like a half and half sort of thing. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Running, right, okay.
It's like a mix.
Like weightlifting? Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, nice.
There
Right.
we go. Nice.
Fine. So a lot of this is kind of geared towards runners, but I will, just so that we've got some context, I can throw some like weightlifting stuff in there as well. So just following on from what Marcus was saying, when your nutritional foundations are built on restriction and punishment, you're setting yourself up to underfuel and to fail in your training endeavors. So we really want to be viewing our nutrition alongside our training as a requirement and not a reward, as was like alluded to earlier. You're not training to earn your food. You're not training to like earn a biscuit to keep it going. You're training to get better at something, and your nutrition should be there to facilitate you and helping you get to that goals, and not hindering you and limiting your performance. So when it comes to underfueling, it's very, very common even in recreational athletes, and the main kind of side effects that we see are underperformance. So if you're not eating enough, you're not going to be performing as well, you're not going to improve as much. You're not going to recover as quickly, you're going to pick up injuries more often, and when you pick up those injuries, they're going to take longer to heal, and you might even get recurrent, same like little niggles. These can all be signs and symptoms that you're not eating enough food to support the amount of training that you're doing. And we spoke about before that like anyone that's run a half marathon or a marathon is kind of an obscene thing to do, and you lose the view of the obscenity of it because you're in it, you're doing it, and you're surrounded by other people that are doing it. But running over 40 kilometers is not something you'd catch me doing. So if you're not doing what the average person is doing, you can't be eating like the average person. You have to be eating more than the average person. You have to think a little bit more about it. The only other thing I'll touch on is relative energy deficiency in sport. This is a really common condition, particularly in sports that idealize a certain body type. So long distance runners, rhythmic gymnasts, ballerinas, they all tend to have really high incidence of relative energy deficiency in sport. And it's essentially eating so little that you have really, like, it's not subclinical anymore. There are real impacts on your performance, on your recovery, and also hormone imbalance, which I know is another one that's thrown around on social media a lot, but actually amenorrhea or a lack of a menstrual cycle is a really common symptom of red S in sport. So it's just another thing to be aware of.
Sorry, just a quick comment on that. Like, it's something that I've become a bit more aware of, but it's not, from my understanding, very well known within the medical fields. How do you get tested for it? What kind of symptoms should you be looking for that aren't these like really big ticket things like losing a menstrual cycle and things like that?
I think that it's the good thing about red S is that the solution to the cure for red S essentially is just to be fueling properly for your training. But if you have genuine concerns that I'm not feeling right, something feels off, I'm getting more injured, I'm really tired, there's nothing, go to your GP for advice. They would be your first port of call, obviously. None of this is personalised medical advice, this is just for education, before I get sued. But yeah, like, you're right though, there's not a lot of research about it, which isn't a shock to anybody because, like most things, it's most conditions that mainly or exclusively affect women are very under-researched. So it is true that there's not a lot of evidence to kind of show, and you're right about the big ticket things, because some of it will be subclinical. But I think a good thing would be to kind of sit down, have a look at what you're doing with your training, what you are eating, whether you think it's maybe not enough, and just playing about that, trying to find ways to increase the amount of energy, particularly that you're taking in. But again, if you do have concerns about like actual symptoms and side effects, just chat to your GP. But if you think it's red S, your nutrition will be the thing that you want to target specifically. Sorry, I thought there was another hand, but fine, cool. Okay, so really, I said we had 10 minutes to sprint through, and I'll be going at an incredibly leisurely pace. The foundations of basic nutrition. This hopefully shouldn't be news to anybody, but I know there's a lot of misinformation noise on the internet, and it's very easy to not be able to see the forest for the trees when you're concerned about Celtic sea salt and green powders, when actually no one's eating the fruits and vegetables. So you've got your main macronutrients there, your fat, your carbs, and your protein. Your carbohydrates are your body's preferred source of fuel, particularly when you're doing exercise, high intensity exercise like weightlifting, or even running. Your body will preferentially use carbohydrates for fuel, so you have to be eating enough carbohydrates to fuel your training. Fats are important for vitamin absorption. Your fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, they're important for taste and satiety, and they should make up, as we'll go on to see, about 30% of your daily calories. And protein, which is what most people who are involved in sport, it's their first introduction to sport nutrition, is that you need to be eating enough protein and you should bin everything else off and eat loads of protein. Protein is important, but it's often overemphasized at the detriment to other aspects of your nutrition, which we're going to talk about, particularly your micronutrients. So again, particularly the weightlifters in the room can sometimes get a bit caught up in their macronutrients and not eat a fruit or vegetable. So your micronutrients are really important, not only for your general health, but also for your performance, particularly your fiber, your fruits and vegetables, your dairy products. These are all great sources of micronutrients that don't fit nicely into those macro categories. So this slide is basically just for your fundamentals of nutrition. Lots of people ask me outlandish questions kind of when it comes to nutrition. That's not to shame anybody, but it goes to show the landscape of nutritional information on the internet. 83% of people, adults in the UK, don't eat 5 portions of fruits or vegetables per day, and that is a bare minimum set by the World Health Organization. So that should be priority number 1 for the 83% of people in this room. 96% of adults in the UK don't eat recommended fibre intakes of 30 grams per day. So again, don't care about Celtic sea salt, and I don't care about seed oils. You need to be eating your fibre. And 70% of adults in the UK don't meet UK government exercise guidelines, and I'm sure that would probably be higher in this room because there's a lot of people involved in exercise here. But this goes to show these are the kind of 3 main health, diet, and lifestyle interventions that we should be focusing on based on the National Diet and Nutrition Survey from 2019 to 2023. But overwhelmingly, people are really focused on the minutiae when it comes to their diet, and I think this is hopefully just a really helpful, pragmatic thing to help you zoom out and actually focus on the things that matter. Make sure you're balancing your plate with carbohydrates, protein, and fat, and make sure you're getting your fruits and vegetables and your fibre in. It's not sexy, it's not scary, it doesn't spread like wildfire, but it's the truth, it's what works. So these are the things that you should be focused on and try not to get confused by all the noise that's on social media. So this is your macronutrient split essentially for the general healthy population. About 50% of your calories should come from carbohydrates. Has anyone seen the new US dietary guidelines with whole grains at the bottom? They've flipped the pyramid on its head and pretended that that's some sort of public health triumph. 50% of your calories from carbohydrates. That's where you get a lot of your micronutrients, your fibre, and they're also nice and cheap and widely available. Healthy doesn't need to be expensive. 20% of your daily calories from protein, and we'll go on to see what that means in terms of grams per kilo of body weight, because a lot of people like to play with that number as well. And about 30% of your calories from fat. Very balanced, very nuanced, not that interesting, but this is actually the important stuff, so it's worth just writing home about. So, and then fueling for your actual training. I think that might just be
A filler slide there, yeah.
Yeah, filler slide.
I like it.
So if we move on to kind of the sports nutrition basics. So instead of starting with numbers, which ironically I have started with there, but overall when I'm talking about nutrition, I really want people to focus on their dietary patterns rather than absolute hard numbers. As we heard before about rules, they're usually not that helpful. And people will always, if you tell someone you're a dietitian, the first thing they ask you for is a diet plan, and that's very prescriptive and it always fails, because what's more helpful for patients is just to provide them with the information, provide them with the guidance, and then you have to, unfortunately, it is a little bit harder than following a diet plan. It seems a little bit harder than following a diet plan. But work out what works for you, what you like, what's sustainable for you. But protein. When it comes to protein, this is kind of the hierarchy of things that you need to be worried about. So at the base, the most important thing when it comes to your protein intake to support your training is the amount of protein that you're taking in. For even recreational athletes, that's about 1.4 to 2 grams per kilo of protein. The RDA for protein for the general population is about 0.75. I think that's a little bit low, especially if you're doing regular physical activity. It's definitely too low. I'd say for the runners in the room, 1.4 is probably enough if you're just trying to maintain your muscle mass whilst you're training for something like a marathon. And then again, for the weightlifters in the room, you might at times with higher intensity, higher volume training blocks want to be aiming for 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. Distribution, so I didn't even get to my slide, I was like, so much I wasn't finished. Sorry.
Oh,
He isn't finished, is he?
he's not
Go back.
finished. He's
It's
not
fine.
finished. Yeah.
The second most important thing is the distribution, so we kind of want it to be spread kind of evenly throughout the day. What we see is people's breakfasts tend to be pretty low in protein, and then people's dinners are like, shit, I'm not eating any protein today, and then you whack it in. Which it's not the end of the world again, it's not hard and fast regime to go by, but distributing your protein throughout the day is a very nice and helpful thing to do. And then the timing is also important, but just a little bit at the top of the pyramid. You are more likely to trigger muscle protein synthesis after a workout, for a few hours after a workout. It's not 15, like some people think it's half an hour. It's fine, like calm down, go home, have a rest, go for a shower. Everything's okay. For a few hours, your muscles are much more sensitive to taking up glucose, taking up amino acids. So if you can, in that 2, 3, 4 hour window after exercise, get some protein in. Again, to help you refuel, to replenish your glycogen stores, to replenish your protein stores, and to help you recover to be able to train the way that you want to train to reach your goals. Again, we're not eating that protein because we've done the workout, we've earned the protein. We're eating the protein so that we can fuel our training properly. Sorry, I feedback that now. Okay, carbohydrates. Loads of people focus on protein and not enough people focus on carbohydrates, especially, well, actually, weightlifters as well and runners all need more carbohydrates than most people think. So if you're doing kind of a moderate training block, moderate intensity, 1 to 2 hours a day, you're aiming for 5 to 8 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight. That is hard to visualize until you've actually gone and counted it out, and it's probably significantly more carbohydrates than people would be used to eating. If you're kind of in a very high intensity training block and doing like 2 to 4 hour sessions each day, you're ramping that up even more to 7 to 10 grams of carbohydrates per kilo of body weight. And then very high, which I'm assuming if we've all got jobs, we're probably not doing, unless you're training for a 128-kilometre run.
I'm not
Anyone?
speaking about that, no, it's fine.
Who said that?
So if you're doing very high intensity long runs, we're looking at 10 to 12 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight. Again, this can feel a little bit obscene if you're not used to it, so you can work your way up to it, but a helpful thing to do if you're planning on running a half, a marathon, 120-kilometre race. Start counting your carbohydrates, just loosely, just see where you're at and see if there's any space for you to increase those. There probably is, because most people aren't eating enough carbohydrates.
We're all good.
We're all going, thank you.
Okay, and then race day. So if you're doing exercise that's kind of less than 90 minutes, you're probably fine for carbohydrates. You've got glycogen stores, so glycogen's a storage form of carbohydrates. You've got glycogen stores in your liver, which is primarily used to keep your blood sugar levels at a nice constant rate. And then you've got glycogen stores in all of your muscles, and that glycogen that's in your muscles is used locally, so that's not used to maintain your blood sugar, that's just used to fuel the performance of that actual muscle. So when we're doing long races over 90 minutes, we're essentially trying to saturate those glycogen stores as much as we can. And it's kind of a losing battle, you're chasing your own tail, because as you're refilling your glycogen stores, your body's using them at the same time. So again, you have to eat more carbohydrates than most people think. You also have to eat more carbohydrates for longer than most people think. So you can't like cram, it's not like cramming for an exam. You have to be like a little bit more prepared than that. 5 to 7 days before, we're ramping up our carbohydrates to 5 to 10 grams per kilo. 2 to 3 days before, 10 to 12 grams per kilo, and that's when that little pie chart that I showed with 50% calories from carbs, that will ramp up to 60 to 70% of your calories from carbohydrates. Again, it will feel like an unnatural amount of carbohydrates to do because you're running an unnatural distance, and like, don't lose the obscenity of that. Like, it is an incredible thing to be doing. It's not an average thing to be doing, so you're not going to be eating like the average person. When it comes to race day, we're looking at 1 to 4 grams per kilo of carbohydrates, and we'll go on to talk about why. The main thing that this ramps right down is that essentially, I mean, it's day top, like it's too late to be thinking about 5 to 7 days prior. We need to be thinking about how we can get carbohydrates into your muscles, into your liver, into your bloodstream as quickly as possible. And we can't be doing 10 to 12 grams per kilo because you'd have an accident on the start line, on the finish line. So your GI tolerance is really important. So again, it's important to be planning for these things before the races happen, because nothing new on race day.
That was so politely put.
Yeah, I didn't do it that way. Maybe we practice it. And then intra-race, again, this is your gels, like 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour is the general consensus from the International Olympic Committee. Can be helpful if people use gels, or even like jelly babies, Haribo sweets, those kind of things that are like very simple disaccharides that are digested quickly, which we'll go on to talk about now. I'm just this performative. You need to get okay, this is your insides. Your stomach's on the right there, kind of hidden by your liver that's in front of it. And what we need to talk about when we're thinking about carbohydrates, particularly on race day, is gastric emptying. And gastric emptying is just a fancy word of how quickly the food in your stomach gets out of your stomach and into your small intestine, which ironically is the really, really long thing in the middle there. It's not very small at all. So there are different things that will affect the rate that your stomach empties. And when it comes to nutrition, the things that are going to slow your stomach emptying are protein, fat, and fiber, and the energy density of your meals and how solid your meals are. So when you're a few days before the race, or even if you're 5 or 6 hours before the race, you could be having a meal that's got carbohydrates in it and some protein and fat, because you've got a few hours to digest that. But you don't want to be eating loads of protein and fat. You want to be kind of getting 60 to 75% of your calories on that race day meal time from carbohydrates. The closer that you get to the start of the race, the quicker the carbohydrates need to get out of your stomach and into your bloodstream. And to speed things up, we need to get food that's low in protein, low in fat, and low in fiber, and actually more refined carbohydrates. So this is where I get frustrated when people label whole food groups as like unhealthy, because the healthfulness of a food depends on the context that it's being eaten. So if you're an hour before a race and you slam a bag of Haribo, that could be the healthiest choice for you because you're trying to get carbohydrates on board to run your marathon. But if there's somebody else that's completely sedentary, not doing any exercise, and then they have a bag of Haribo for breakfast, I might have something else to say about it. But we're looking for, essentially, the closer you get to the start of your race, higher glycemic index carbohydrates. So carbohydrates that just get out of you really, really quickly. That could be fruit juice, that could be gels, that could be sweets, that could be white bread, white pasta, white rice. Those more refined carbohydrates are going to digest quicker, and those are the kind of things that you need when it comes to the start of your race. And then last thing I'm going to say is just about supplements. So supplements are not a substitution for a healthy diet, and your calories and your carbohydrates and your protein are the main things that are going to improve your performance. But I'd say the three main ones this is mainly for runners, and there are a couple of others that might be useful for like weightlifters or high intensity strength athletes. Caffeine is one of the most researched ergogenic A's that we have. It is fantastic. It reduces perceived rate of exertion, and it improves power outputs, it reduces fatigue, and we're looking for 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram 30 to 60 minutes before a race. Caffeine is not energy, so it is not a replacement for your carbohydrates, but it can help to improve your performance. But it is not energy. There are no calories in it. Creatine is another one. We're looking at 3 to 5 grams per day, just consistently. The timing of this doesn't really matter. You're looking to saturate your creatine stores in your muscles. We used to think you needed a loading dose. We don't really anymore. Charlie, you mentioned earlier about like cycling. You'd seen some stuff on cycling.
Yeah, when I first started to lift weights, I thought it was like you had to cycle it month on, month off, but you were saying that's not true.
So like the evidence now is just to take it at a consistent time every day whenever you can remember, and take it consistently. And then carbohydrates, again, 30 to 60 grams per hour for races over 90 minutes. So these are the main 3 ones that you'd be looking at if you were particularly a runner. And the only other one, if you're doing kind of really high intensity weight training exercises, I'm thinking more like high rocks and CrossFit. Beta-alanine can be another really helpful one as well. Not so much for runners. Beta-alanine is really useful for short, intense bursts of exercise. But I've not got that up there because I'm really sorry, I thought you were all going to be runners. So I'd say the key takeaways for me, nutrition-wise, for people is just that context matters. There's no one healthy diet, there's no one size fits all, there's no unhealthy food or toxic or poison foods. The context matters. If you're not doing what the average person is doing, you can't be eating like them. Variety is really important. Don't lose your micronutrients and your macronutrients. So if you're hitting your carbohydrates and protein, that's fantastic, but please, for the love of God, eat a vegetable. And then adequacy, you need to be eating enough food to fuel your training. For the majority of people, 1,500 to 1,800 calories is not going to cut it if you're training an hour or two every day. It's just not enough food. So I know that can be really challenging and scary for people who are used to restricting their intake a lot, but I'm hoping that this talk has given you some tools and a little bit of time to space to reflect. And yeah, if you've got any questions, I'm just mindful of the time. Nutrition-wise, I'll be hanging about, so just come and just ask me. I'll be around.
Amazing. Well, before we wrap up, I think we're just going to do one takeaway from the whole talk itself, at least for us all. I'll go first. I say for me, just the main thing that I've learned is, including the prep coming into this talk, was how we see certain people with certain bodies and how that's been, how we've seen that and how we've learned to judge certain people just through what we're told. And, say, for instance, I would internalize something like, I will be lazy if I look a certain way. That will carry straight over to someone else. So it's really important to be aware of what the messaging is within certain body types, and thus how that will carry over to what we think about others as well. It's such an important thing because it just divides us, and so just being aware of what we're being told by the TikTok videos is just really, really important. I think that's for me personally.
James?
How about you guys?
I'd say, I hope the main takeaways for people can be that food isn't scary and health doesn't have to be punishing and restrictive. Like, health can be found in abundance, and you can frame your health in that way, and you can frame your food in that way. And also, hopefully, we've managed to convince everybody that the shape of someone's body doesn't tell you anything about their health, and it certainly doesn't tell you anything about their character.
Yeah, I think leading on from that, for me, it's the abundance thing as well. I think if we can help, just in any way, sort of move from this restriction-focused hyperfixation mindset and lifestyle of yo-yoing and all of these things to just neutrality and finding ways to find neutrality in our diet, in our lifestyle, and do that through ways of abundance and addition and excitement and all of those things. Yeah, I've certainly, like I say, found that myself, and I can see the research and the theories supporting that too. So that's a real key takeaway for me.
Well, yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. It's been incredibly exciting to do this. Thank you to RunLimited as well. Liam's just walking over. Thank you, Liam. Appreciate it. Yeah, we do have some goodie bags for everyone. In 3 of them, we have, so on the back of the leaflets, there are some items to give away. Some vouchers for our good partners over in Australia, LSKD, and the Shocks earphones as well. So before you leave, check the back of the leaflet in the goodie bag that you get to see if you've won a prize. And yeah, we'll open the floor to any questions and answers to anyone. Thank you very much. Well done, chat.
Well done, boys. We'll just see if people can come up.
Righty-ho. Any questions? Yes.
What's the crack with electrolytes? But what's the crack with putting them in water? Do we do it every day? Should we just be doing it after working out? Because I feel like that's the new sort of trend as such, electrolytes.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
James?
Well,
I'll go for this.
So what I would say about electrolytes is that the average adult in the UK eats over 8 grams of salt per day, and the recommended intakes of sodium is 6 grams per day, because dietary sodium intake is one of the main modifiable risk factors for cardiovascular disease, and that is the 2nd biggest killer in the UK. Can you tell I've said that phrase quite a lot of times? So electrolytes can be useful if you're doing very long, high-intensity workouts in very hot conditions, so 4 or 5 hours. The majority of people eat enough salt, even to support the additional training that they're doing, because the recommended dietary salt intake is 6 grams per day, but that was considered an achievable goal. What we probably need is about 4 grams per day. It was just thought that no one would go for 4 grams per day because they were like, well, there's no point, I'm never going to do that. So, but it turns out no one's aiming for 6 either. But yeah, I think that the marketing is usually quite good, and the main ingredient is usually sodium. So lots of people find that they respond well to electrolytes, but what I would say is just check whether you're being charged a fortune for sodium, because it's the cheapest ingredient, and a lot of them contain mainly sodium, and most people are eating enough sodium anyway. The only other thing I would say about electrolytes is, again, people can be very convincing because they can sound like you can't absorb any water unless there's electrolytes in it. But no one should be drinking deionized water, like even tap water has electrolytes in it. So the marketing is very powerful. If you're doing very high intensity exercise, if you sweat a lot, if after a race you can kind of see like salt on your clothes, it might be worth then after that taking an electrolyte if you feel really dehydrated and you've got a sore head. But most people don't need them. I do a lot of exercise and I'm sweating right now. I'm the sweatiest person I've ever met. And I don't take electrolytes if that means anything. But yeah, take home, most people don't need them. If you do like them, check that you're not being charged through the nose for salt, essentially.
Nice.
You heard it here first.
There you go. Any other questions from anyone? Yeah, over there.
You've touched on it briefly, but supplements, I know they don't replace a healthy diet, but are there certain ones that you recommend, certain ones that are sort of over-prescribed, would you get in a diet already?
As in like a multivitamin kind of thing, yeah. So vitamin D is one that everybody should be taking in the winter, 10 micrograms per day. Everybody should be taking that. And then there are other groups that don't have white skin. White skin finds it easier to convert sunlight into vitamin D. People who covered up for religious reasons, people who are housebound should take it all year round. If a lot of your runners, maybe during the summer, you don't need it because you're outside, you're in the sun, your skin might be able to convert it. But over the winter, definitely 10 micrograms of vitamin D every day for everybody. And apart from that, the evidence for multivitamins is quite mixed, and we don't really see that people who take a multivitamin have improved health outcomes. But it is one of those things that I do, even though there's not really evidence for it. Because it's cheap and accessible, and I'm also a vegetarian, so it just kind of gives me like a little bit of a fail-safe. Like maybe I've not, had like fortified soy milk, or maybe I'm a bit low in vitamin B12, or maybe I'm a little bit low in iodine this day. It just is like a catch-all for like a penny a day or something. So again, focus on your diet. It's not going to do you any harm. I definitely don't pay loads of money for them. Just take like an over-the-counter A to Z multivitamin and mineral if you want like a little bit of an insurance policy. Apart from that, it's pretty personalised. It's worth just looking at your diet, going through your diet with a dietitian if possible. If you've got like specific questions, you can come up and ask me after this, just to see if there's any like glaringly obvious holes. But again, the key take home is variety. So if you're eating a varied diet, you're more likely to be giving your body the opportunity to get all these different vitamins and minerals. So it's not sexy, but like eating a wide range of foods, loads of different colours, is boring, but it actually is the stuff that works.
Righty-ho, any more questions before we wrap up? Is there a hand over there? No? Yeah, Lizzie?
Flipping over to the mindset side of things, because I know we touched a lot on nutrition.
Yes.
Obviously January, starting the new year, is quite a tough time for everyone. Everyone gets sucked into the diet culture, starting the gym, things like that. So what tips do you have with kind of keeping a positive mindset and kind of the language you use for yourself, and striking a balance between not becoming too obsessive with diets and exercising and actually creating a positive thing out there?
Yeah.
I'll let you go for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's a huge thing and something that I was beaming because we could speak for days about like that sort of mindset shift and the different ways that we could do that. Something that we speak about a lot, and I see through evidence and theory, but also just lived experiences. Work, and we spoke about today in terms of diet, but to your question, general lifestyle is focusing much more on the smaller wins, the smaller goals, the smaller targets. Especially this time of year, which you mentioned, we think, I've got to overhaul my life. I've got to be the best. The new year, new me. We all hear that all the time. I've got to be a professional athlete. I've got to do all these things, be the best parent I've ever, all of those things, and set these big grandiose goals. And in doing that, we kind of, again, setting ourselves up with these giant things that we might not always sort of reach or get to. And that's okay. We're all humans. We will have our everyday variables. What we can do is find joy in small goals and small targets and small wins, and be very specific with those as well. So whether, have we heard of SMART goals? Lots of nods. So SMART goals is used a lot in corporate jargon, but there's so much validity to SMART goals. Being specific with them, being time specific with them, like the relevance. So if I want to be a really good runner, I want to whatever it is. Okay, well January I'm not going to do that by the end of January, but I maybe can do something that's relevant to that and still maybe getting me to that June, July, August goal. But what's important is I'm just focusing on that in the here and now, because ultimately, if we look at the big goals 6 months, a year ahead, and we've had a really crap day, that's that's not going to get me there. That's not going to keep me joyful. That's not going to, you know, keep me motivated. What can do that is being, and it can sound flippant, but, you know, finding the joy in that, oh, okay, well, I didn't, you know, I don't feel like I've done my best run today or whatever, but I've still stepped out. I've still got my feet on the ground. I've still been in the park. I don't know, I smiled and asked the barista how their day was. And that was just a micro connection that felt enjoyable. And sometimes like it's just relinquishing the need for those big wins, because sometimes we all have, unfortunately, crap days, and the smile and the hi, how are you at the barista is the best part of that one given day. And that can also be okay. And I think if we can shift to know that that's okay and shift that mindset, we can just allow ourselves so much more grace to be able to find that joy. Yeah. I hope that helps.
You nailed it, yeah. Amazing. Any other questions from anyone? Yes, in the back.
Do you think that the fact that there's no regulation when it comes to like social media information is the issue that we see so much?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
100%. I mean, as someone who suffered on their entry into their journey of health and wellness from the misinformation, 100%, I think it's something that needs to happen. Australia have recently passed a law, right, for youngsters with social media. I think I saw. Yeah.
They can't have YouTube either anymore.
They can't.
Yeah.
YouTube's banned for under 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
Wow, there you go then. Well, one step closer, I guess. But there you go.
But also, like, the advertising standard agency is like playing massive catch up, and with influencers even, people are sent, this isn't necessarily about misinformation, I mean, it feeds into it, but people are sent products and they aren't told, you know, legally, you have to disclose that that's an advert. If you put that on your Instagram story, for example, people don't, and people are always putting these things on Instagram stories. Legally, you have to, but again, there's no one policing, no one checking, no one making sure that these companies and these influencers are upkeeping these laws and these practices that are put in, you know, through the advertising standard agency. So there's just real sort of what's it called? It's the Wild West basically out there, and yeah, no one's upkeeping that.
And I imagine, James, working in the ICU, you see these real impacts of what social media does to our beliefs about health, right, or like fitness and what we should eat. You're the one dealing with these people who come in and are ill because of what they believe.
Yeah, like there's a lot of fault. I think you can speak to any dietitian that works in a hospital and they'll have stories of patients who have, you know, passed away because of malnutrition with these very firmly held beliefs about the toxicity of certain foods, not eating refined sugar, even if it's in an artificial feed that they need to stay alive, and then they eventually pass away. I think that, like, in China, it's a really tricky subject, because in China they pass a law where if you're giving out health information, you have to be qualified to do so. But then we get into the territory of like, well, we don't want to impinge on people being able to do that, because there are people that are unqualified who can give evidence-based advice. That's not the problem. The problem is that fear and misinformation spreads so quickly, and social media companies and, you know, the British Dietetic Association, the General Medical Council, they were all still playing catch up as well. And companies like TikTok are kind of trying to engage more healthcare creators and kind of inviting them to TikTok and having discussions with TikTok and seeing what we can do to kind of bridge that gap, because people are going to social media for their information now, and we are still like typing up patient leaflets and printing them off in black and white on the worst recycled paper you've ever seen in the NHS. Like, we're so painfully and embarrassingly behind the times, and I think that what I can hope, if there are any clinicians in the audience, to really encourage clinicians to get on social media. So, because I think the solution could equally be just to drown out the misinformation with people who are qualified to disseminate nutrition and scientific information.
A bit of anecdotal sort of experience for you there as well. I someone on my page speak about like my hairline and how I have had issues with it in the past. As such, I was approached by a company to be like, oh, we'll give you this medicine if you can say that you're taking the medication. It was a complete grey area for me. I was like, feels like it's not necessarily something that I looked into it. I sought advice. It's actually because that medication that they were asking me to take and promote is something that has to be prescribed by a doctor. Now, you can go to online pharmacies and just tick a box to say, my doctor's prescribed it. That's a problem in itself. But legally, because any prescribed medicine in this country cannot be advertised commercially, so it cannot be. But we don't know that as consumers, and it's the same with GLP jabs, so the weight loss jabs. Huge influencers have been in hot water for advertising that and saying, oh, I'm taking this, you can join. there's actually, it's so widely done now, but it's technically illegal and it shouldn't be done. And when people are so desperate and like, oh, I just want to lose this weight or I want to sort my hairline out, like it's a horrible place to be, they'll just listen. And there's medical consequences that need to be consulted with with a medical professional.
Just to add on to that, whilst I've got a microphone in my hand and everyone's looking, that people on social media will often kind of paint these alternative therapies from the wellness industry as something that's better because pharmaceutical companies fund research. And it's a very good thing that research is being funded because the wellness industry doesn't have to jump through the regulatory hoops that medicine has to. Medicine, we know the side effects of medicine because we study them. We don't know the side effects of supplements because they're completely unregulated. And the wellness industry isn't in the business of improving your health, it's in the business of constant expansion and growth because this is just capitalism at the end of the day. So the wellness industry, influencers will paint the wellness industry out as this like knight in shining armor and the pharmaceutical companies as this like really horrible thing. It's much more nuanced than that. They are not punting a supplement because they care about you, they just want money out of you. So just be really careful of that narrative as well.
Our next talk on capitalism is next week. James is doing that one as well. So. Thank you very much for that. Good question. Anyone else for any questions before we wrap up? Yes.
So just on that, I feel like, maybe because I'm a woman, all the supplement industry is very targeted towards women, but because there's not enough clinical research for women, it's mainly everything's based on men. I mean, personally, I can say I love a supplement. I love a supplement. I suffer with acne my whole life. I've been through 1,000,001 diets. I went vegan for years. Don't recommend it. It looks great, but like it's awful. But like I think that's a really interesting point. Of what you say, it's all obviously everybody wants to make money, but then there is that like genuine concern from female influencers that are like, this helped me or this did.
Yeah. I think I've spoken a little bit about this on social media, particularly around the turn of the new year, that it is a really tricky subject because we absolutely have a problem where there aren't enough, the conditions that exclusively or mainly affect women aren't researched. They just aren't researched. So there's a huge gap in the literature there. And there's a really fine balance because anecdotal evidence can be really powerful and it can guide future research, like it can guide new trials of supplements and diets and interventions. But what I find kind of enraging and unacceptable is when people weaponize the gap in that research for their own financial gain. And it's almost impossible to navigate because you have no idea who is genuinely concerned for your health and who is not. And I think a nice litmus test is like, are they selling it through the link in their bio, or is it just like a really quick TikTok like, oh, I'm suffering with this is my lived experience, this is what helped me, you can try this out? Or is it like, is there urgency there? Is there fear there? Are you being led to believe that you're missing out on something, you have to get this now? So it's little tricks like that marketers will use to try and convince you that you need this thing, but actually they're weaponizing the gap in the literature. And it is a really tricky subject. And I know it's hard when you're like experiencing things and you go out to try and find an evidence base for it, and it just doesn't exist. So it's definitely a shortfall. Like I said, science isn't infallible. Like there are problems with science, and a big one is that kind of inequality when it comes to gender. Not only the people conducting the research, but the people that were involving in the research in and of itself. So yeah, I don't want anyone to feel ridiculous for taking a supplement. Like I say, I take it over the counter, I'm not leaving it, and I've got no reason to. Like, I take a psyllium musk supplement and I probably eat like 60 grams of fibre a day. There's no need for these things. Sometimes we just take them because, we feel like it does help us. But just be mindful if people are using fear, urgency, you're missing out, you need to do this now. This is the best thing that's ever happened. It will clear your brain fog, you'll sleep better, your skin will be better, like every problem under the sun, then just be wary of it. That's a really good point.
Yes, one more in the back, yes.
To add to that exactly, from a personal trainer perspective as well, so I get a lot of clients who come to us for help. And there was this time where this person reached out to me, and so what we usually do as personal trainers, we ask them if they have any medical conditions, if they take any supplements. No medical conditions, unusual, but they had a list of 30, 40 supplements. And when I asked them, why are you taking those? Do you have any unusual? So, and he said, no, they can follow this influencer, and I look up to them, and they are taking the exact supplements. So they had like a list of 40 supplements that they were taking. James Brash, 𝐷𝐶AAs, vitamin D, vitamin B, all of that stuff. So the first positive thing I did for that person is save their
Pay me instead.
Yes.
Someone who sometimes works as influencers, if there's a link in their bio or like it's an affiliated link, they get money every time you click that link. So if they actually like mean something and they go, oh, go to this website and do your research, that's probably good. But if there's a link, they're getting money off every click.
There you go.
Yeah,
100%.
So that's good. All of them there.
Just one influencer just comes to mind. She's called Dr. 𝐕𝐵, and she's a medical doctor and she's a runner, and she gives out really great evidence-based advice, and she talks about like underfueling and women's health specifically. Dr. 𝐕𝐵. She just came to the top of my head. She is a great source of information if you're into that kind of stuff.
We can send an email afterwards with all the information. Definitely, yeah, we'll do. Yeah.
Yes, I had when I was going through breast cancer, I had people reaching out to me saying, don't have chemo, don't have this stuff. It was scary. You know, and for one split second, because at one point I was given 7 years to live, and actually after other research scans and stuff, they said no, that's not the case, which was wonderful. But during the time that I was given this 7 years, I was targeted by people saying, if you take this oil or you do this or you do that, you know, forget the chemo. You're going to be okay, and you're just going to. I was like, and at one split second, as I said, when I was given that 7 years, I thought, okay, maybe. But it was, you know, other people around me that were supporting me because I was vulnerable that like steered me away from that. But when you're so vulnerable, it's scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And it taps into insecurity and fear, and that's how it works. And it doesn't make anyone can be convinced by that sort of information, because people can be so convincing. And you're not the first person that's happened to. You will be the last, but I'm glad that the other person.
Thanks for sharing. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I think that's looking about time. Go on slightly over.
Why don't we hand out the bags while everyone's seated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think that's the most efficient way?
Maybe.
What do you think? Everyone in one line. No, I'm just. What's that?
Because there's the voucher that we've got to give out. This.
Oh,
things.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just hold fire for 1 second.
Okay. Amazing. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for such a good talk.